Good evening, I'm Clara Nightwell, and tonight I'm here with Rowan Hartsteel. Tonight we're staying with a life that shaped an entire continent, and yet never truly belonged to the place it ruled.
This is the story of a man often remembered as French, though he was not. Born in Corsica, newly claimed by France, he entered the world already marked as an outsider.
So even before power, there was distance.
Yes. His accent, his background, even his name placed him slightly apart. He would rise within France, but never fully dissolve into it.
That must shape someone deeply.
It does. Tonight, we won't follow him as a conqueror, but as a figure moving between belonging and exclusion, between the man and the legend built around him.
Rowan, let's begin where his story was still uncertain.
Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica, an island that had only recently become French. For generations, the people there had spoken Italian, lived by local customs, and carried a strong sense of separation from the mainland.
So even the idea of being French was still new.
Very new. When Napoleon was born, French rule was fresh, fragile, and resented by many. His family navigated this change carefully, adapting just enough to survive.
That sounds like growing up between two identities.
Exactly. At home, he spoke with an accent. His first language was closer to Italian than French. When he later left for military school on the mainland, that difference followed him.
Children notice those differences immediately.
They do. At school, Napoleon was isolated. His classmates mocked his accent, his manners, his background. He was smaller, poorer, and unfamiliar with the social codes of France.
So he learned early what it meant not to belong.
Yes. He withdrew inward. Books became refuge. Discipline became protection. Where others sought friendship, he sought mastery.
As if excellence could replace acceptance.
That is a powerful instinct. Napoleon became intensely focused, especially on mathematics and military theory. Structure offered him something emotion could not: predictability.
Was he already imagining a future in the army?
Perhaps not glory, but stability. The army was one of the few institutions where origin mattered less than competence. For someone from the margins, it offered a narrow door inward.
So joining wasn't ambition yet, it was survival.
Yes. Long before Europe knew his name, Napoleon was simply trying to secure a place in a world that kept reminding him he was not from there.
And that quiet tension between origin and opportunity stays with him.
It does. And it will shape every step that follows. When the French Revolution erupted, it did not arrive as an idea, it arrived as collapse. Institutions fell, loyalties fractured, and the old order lost its authority almost overnight.
For someone already on the margins, that must have felt unsettling.
It was unsettling for many, but for Napoleon, it also removed barriers. Titles and ancestry suddenly mattered less. What counted was usefulness. Who could act when others hesitated?
So chaos created opportunity.
Yes. Napoleon aligned himself with the revolutionary government not out of ideological passion, but practicality. The revolution needed officers. He needed a place.
A mutual necessity.
Exactly. His abilities began to stand out. During moments of unrest and rebellion, he demonstrated calm under pressure and an unusual ability to read terrain and movement.
That kind of clarity becomes visible very quickly.
It does. In Toulon, during a critical siege, Napoleon proposed bold artillery placements that shifted the balance. The success was undeniable, and suddenly he was noticed.
Recognition he had never really known before.
Yes. Promotion followed rapidly. At an age when most officers were still waiting, Napoleon advanced. The army became not only his profession, but his identity.
Did belonging finally arrive?
Not fully. Acceptance came through performance, not affection. He was useful, admired, but still distinct. His accent softened, but it never disappeared.
So even as he rose, the distance remained.
Yes, and perhaps that distance fueled him. Each success pushed him further inside the system, yet never fully at rest within it.
It sounds like the beginning of a momentum that becomes difficult to stop.
That's right. Once motion begins under such conditions, it rarely remains modest for long. As Napoleon's successes accumulated, something subtle began to shift. Victories no longer felt exceptional. They became expected. The pace of his rise left little room for reflection.
So achievement stopped feeling like a rival.
Yes, Each campaign brought recognition, but also pressure. The Republic increasingly relied on him to stabilize what politics could not.
That's a dangerous place to stand.
It is. When institutions weaken, individuals grow disproportionately large. Napoleon began to embody order itself, not by declaration, but by necessity.
As if stability had a face.
Exactly. His image traveled faster than he did. Reports exaggerated. Success hardened into legend. The man became increasingly distant from the story told about him.
That distance can be isolating.
It was. He learned to trust fewer voices. Decisions narrowed. Momentum replaced deliberation. Once movement becomes identity, stopping begins to feel like disappearance.
So continuing forward felt safer than pausing.
Yes. Expansion became reassurance. Each campaign affirmed that motion still worked.
But Europe was watching.
It was, with unease. Coalitions formed. Alliances shifted. What had once been revolutionary defense slowly resembled dominance.
And at some point, the revolution itself fades into the background.
It does. The ideals that open the door become distant. What remains is scale. Armies, borders, expectations.
It feels like the moment when history stops asking permission.
Yes. And when that happens, even those guiding it are no longer fully in control. By the time Europe turned fully against him, Napoleon's world had grown immense and fragile. Armies stretched across borders, alliances shifted constantly, and victory required movement without rest.
As if the system itself depended on him never stopping.
Yes. What once felt like momentum had become obligation. Each campaign existed partly to sustain the one before it.
That kind of pressure leaves very little room for error.
It does, and errors began to accumulate. Long supply lines, exhausted soldiers, political fatigue, the machinery still moved. But unevenly.
So Waterloo wasn't a single mistake.
No. It was the moment when many strains converged. Weather, timing, miscommunication, exhaustion, small factors that only become decisive when the margin is gone.
The world had finally caught up with him.
Yes! As Victor Hugo would later write, only Waterloo could stop someone as big as Napoleon, not because it was greater, but because nothing larger remained.
That sentence feels less like judgment and more like inevitability.
It does. Waterloo marked the end of movement, the moment when history placed its hand gently and firmly on his shoulder.
And after that there was nowhere left to go.
Only distance. Defeat was not dramatic. It was final.
A man built on motion, suddenly forced to stand still.
And that stillness would define what followed. After Waterloo, Napoleon was no longer a figure in motion. He was removed from the world he had shaped and sent far away to the island of St. Helena, isolated in the South Atlantic.
An island chosen specifically to prevent return.
Yes, remote, difficult to reach, surrounded by open sea. It was not meant to imprison his body alone, but his influence.
For someone who had lived through movement, that must have felt unbearable.
It was a profound reversal. Days became repetitive. Horizons remained fixed. Time, once compressed by urgency, now expanded endlessly.
Silence can become its own kind of pressure.
Yes. Napoleon spent long hours dictating memories, revisiting campaigns, shaping the narrative of his own life, perhaps trying to keep motion alive through words.
As if memory became the last territory he could still control.
Exactly. But the body does not obey memory. His health declined. Pain increased. Fatigue settled into permanence.
And the world slowly moved on without him.
It did. Europe reorganized. Borders shifted again. The man who once defined an era now lived at its edge.
That kind of ending feels deeply lonely.
Yes. Exile is not only separation from land, it is separation from relevance.
And yet, even there, his presence still seemed to disturb people.
It did, because even in stillness, his name carried weight and uncertainty. Napoleon died on St. Helena in 1821. Officially, the cause was stomach cancer, the same illness that had taken members of his family.
A medical ending after such an extraordinary life.
Yes, and yet almost immediately, doubt began to form.
Because the story didn't feel complete.
Decades later, analyses of hair believed to belong to Napoleon revealed elevated levels of arsenic. This discovery reopened questions that history had tried to close.
So the possibility of poisoning emerged.
Yes, though no conclusion followed. Arsenic was present in wallpapers, medicines, and the environment of the time. What appeared suspicious could also be ordinary.
Uncertainty remained.
It did. Some called for exhumation, hoping modern science might finally answer the question. Others argued that opening the tomb would disturb something that history should let rest.
As if the body itself had become part of the debate.
Exactly. Napoleon had conquered nations in life, and in death, he continued to unsettle certainty.
So even his final moment refuses to be fully known.
Yes, and perhaps that is fitting. A life defined by movement ends not with resolution, but with doubt.
A man remembered not only for what he did, but for the questions he left behind.
Some lives conclude. Others simply fade into inquiry.
Before we close tonight, I'd like to invite Margaret to join us for a quiet moment. Margaret, for those who felt drawn to Napoleon's final years, where might you gently guide them next?
Thank you, Clara. This is one of those lives where books don't try to explain. They try to stay close. A beautiful place to begin is Napoleon, A Life by Andrew Roberts. It moves carefully between the man and the legend, allowing both to exist without forcing judgment.
So it doesn't try to decide who he was for us.
Exactly. And for readers who feel curious about what lived beneath the image, Napoleon, The Man Behind the Myth by Adam Zamoyski, offers a quieter, more intimate perspective.
To step behind the name itself.
Yes. And finally, The Campaigns of Napoleon by David G. Chandler helps us understand how his presence became so large that later writers, like Alexandre Dumas, could refer to him without even naming him.
As if the name no longer needed to be spoken.
Sometimes history becomes that heavy.
Thank you, Margaret. That was a gentle place to pause tonight.
Thank you, Clara. It was a pleasure, as always.
As we sit with his story, I keep thinking about how some lives don't end when the person disappears.
Yes, some lives continue as questions, carried forward by those who come after.
Napoleon's life feels like that, less a conclusion, more an echo.
Because his story isn't only about what he achieved, it's about scale. How large a human life can grow, and what it costs when it does.
And what happens when the world finally asks it to stop?
Yes, movement can become identity, and when it ends, the silence that follows can feel unbearable.
Maybe that's why his final years feel so heavy, not because of punishment, but because of stillness.
Stillness asks questions. Action never does.
And even now, we're still asking them.
Perhaps that's his final legacy. Not answers, but reflection.
A reminder that even the largest lives are still human ones. Rowan, thank you for walking through this life with such care tonight.
Thank you, Clara. Some stories ask us not to conclude, only to listen.
If this conversation stayed with you, you're welcome to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to continue, there are other stories here waiting quietly, about memory, identity, and the moments history leaves unresolved. Until next time, stay with us.